This podcast contains potentially adult language, adult themes, definitely drinking, and possibly sexual context. Listener discretion is advised. Welcome to Drinking with Authors, the podcast. I am your host, Erica Lance. With me today is my amazing co-host, C.R. Rice, and our guest is Evan Bond. Woo! Woo! Did you add a track there? I just add to the woo. I wish I had a live studio audience. Okay, let's talk about first what we're drinking. I am actually drinking, and I'm just opening it. I found more of my favorite, which is Flat Rock Cider Company's Ice Spice Baby.
How big is your fridge?
I just don't want to talk about that right now, and I invite less judgment because I keep finding it at the back of Publix's coolers, and it makes me very happy because it's a winter thing, but it tastes like warm holidays in a can. So, CR, what are you drinking today?
I went back to my rum and Dr. Pepper. I haven't been allowed to have soda for a while, so I got my big cup.
Your big cup, your rum and Dr. Pepper cup. I love it. Okay, Evan, what are you drinking?
So I'm drinking this cocktail that pairs with my book, since it's all like campfire themed. It's vanilla vodka, Irish cream, Bailey's Irish cream, Kahlua, and milk. And it's not bad. Normally I would drink rum and Coke, but I figured I'd do something a little bit more s'moresy, right?
Yeah, I like the s'moresy. That sounds delicious. Now my
fun.
cider doesn't seem nearly as fancy as it did like 3 seconds ago. Not nearly as fancy. Oh, our sponsor today is Skunk Brothers Spirits. DWA10 is the coupon code if you check them out. Okay. Evan, what do you write for those that may be not familiar with you?
So I actually write thriller, suspense, and a little bit of horror. I'm kind of moving more into the horror every time I write. So my preferred genre now is definitely horror, but mostly like psychological thriller, suspense, that kind of stuff.
Very cool. And when did you first start writing?
Oh man, so I mean, I've been writing ever since I was like a kid. I used to write dumb little short stories for my friends that were all terrible. And then I continued writing in high school, and I was just writing more short stories and more stuff. And but I in book format, I published my first book in 2015. So I've been doing that since I've been publishing books since 2015, but otherwise pretty much forever. So
very cool. What made you decide to publish?
Actually, I had an English teacher in high school. She gave us an assignment to write a fairy tale, and I raised my hand and I said, I don't want to write a fairy tale. Can I do something else? And she said, yeah, go for it. And I was like, okay. So I wrote this action story, and I thought it was fun. I turned it in, and when she gave our grades back, she said out in front of the entire class, she was like, oh my God, Evan, that was amazing. You should do more. And I was like, okay. And that kind of put me on the path to want to publish. And then I just kind of, I ever since then I was writing a book, and it took me 5 years to write my first book, but that's what kind of pushed me to want to publish something.
So how many books do you have out now?
I now have 6 books out now.
6 books out.
Yes.
Very cool. And what was the first one?
So the first one was called To the Wolves, and it was based on that same character that I wrote for my high school project. His name was Ethan McCormick. He was a police officer. In the first book, he's framed for murder, of course, pretending he has to go on the run and prove himself innocent and all that stuff. So it's a very, very far cry from the horror that I'm doing now. But
So what made you decide to, kind of go that way, kind of go from where you were to horror?
That was actually kind of where I started. The little stories that I was writing when I was younger. The first story that I can remember that I wrote was called, I think it was just called The House or something. It was about a haunted house and kids went in and whatever. But I was always into writing horror. Like the first real book I ever read was Stephen King's The Stand. So I've always been a horror fan, and and then I don't know, it kind of started to grow out of wanting to write horror because I felt like I would do better just writing like action books or whatever, but it just kind of got back into it. I was like, you know what, I want to go back to what I used to do when I was younger. I wrote horror stuff and it was fun. I had a lot of fun writing horror, so I went back to it. But yeah, I've always been a horror fan. So
that's very cool. So 2015, you published your first book, so that's 7 years ago now.
Yep.
Are you indie published, self-published? How are you published?
Yeah, self-published. Yeah, all of my titles have been self-published. I still every once in a while I kind of weigh it. I sit down and I think, do I want to go traditional? Do I want to stay self-published? And I went self-published in the beginning just because I was actually talking with, like, I guess technically a life coach is what he was. And I told him that one of my dreams was to write a book and publish it, but you know how tough it is to go the traditional route and everything. And he asked me, have you ever heard of self-publishing? And I was like, yeah, I have, but I don't know. And then I just kind of sat down at my desk and just started looking up self-publishing. And I was like, you know what, this isn't, I mean, there's a stigma about self-published still. And I was still kind of, I still felt like, I don't know, maybe self-publishing is not the right way to go, but I ended up going with it, and I love it. It's fun. It's a lot of work, but I have full control over everything. So it's kind of fun.
No, that's true. I mean, I think the stigma comes from, do you have an editor? Do you have, because there are some really great self-published works and some amazing voices that are out there because of self-publishing. And then there are piles of crap.
People that don't use punctuation or the right theirs, or
let anybody else read their book before they put it out, maybe.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. And in my early days, I didn't use a publisher or an editor at all. I just wrote it. I did all the work and I put it out, and I was like, oh, it's going to be great. And it was the very first book I put out. I got a lot of reviews on Amazon, and I was like, I need an editor, I guess, because that was pretty much the same comments where this book needs an editor. It's good, but it needs an editor. And I'm like, yeah, I think I should get an editor. So I work with a few people that edit the book now, and I have beta readers and stuff now. But
oh my goodness, all these people that have to conform to the book.
Yeah, it's a lot of work.
So the first one took you 5 years. Why did it take you so long?
Many reasons. I mean, I started writing it in high school, and it was a completely different book in high school. And then shortly I got into college and I deleted the whole thing and said, I'm starting over. And then somewhere in there, I actually lost it. It got deleted. I was like halfway through it. It got deleted. So I had to start over, and that was rough. But then, as I kept like growing in my skills, I kept going back and going, I want to start over. So it took me so long to get the first one done because I kept hating what I was writing. So, but it doesn't take me that long now. But
so how short have you gotten a book to for you to be able to put it out there?
Let's see. The shortest one was actually my last book before this one that I published was called Echoes of the Past. And I think I wrote that one and got it all published. I think it was like about 6 months is the shortest that I've ever done. So
very cool. And so let's journey through your books. What are they about?
Sure.
We already know what the To the Wolves is. So let's journey through your other books.
Sure. So To the Wolves, that was my first book. And then the second book I wrote was called Death Can Wait. And that was more of like a survival thriller is what I call it. It was it's a couple, they're on a vacation with their friends on a yacht, and they fall overboard and they wash up on an island. They're trying to survive, and they learn they're not alone on the island, and it's inhabited by these bloodthirsty, like this group of people that don't like outsiders, so they're trying to hunt them down, and they're trying to escape the island and everything. And then after that, I published a sequel to the Wolves, so just kind of followed the detective and another story of his. And then after that, I wrote a novella called Getaway, which was like my first like step back into horror. It's about a family vacation to a cabin in the woods. And shortly after they arrive, some hooded figure starts terrorizing the family, and they get swept away in a canoeing accident. Half of them get washed down river. The rest are being harassed by some guy in the woods, and there's murder and betrayal and deceit and everything. And then after that, I published Echoes of the Past, which is my psychological thriller. It's about a woman moves to a small town. She's trying to get away from a abusive relationship. Then someone starts killing people in town, and naturally they all blame her because she's the new person in town, and they're willing to do whatever it takes to stop her from leaving town because they want justice, even resorting to harming her 9-year-old daughter to get their justice. And then the last thing I published is Charred Remains, which is just a collection of short stories and flash fiction and stuff that I've written over the years. So, but those are my books.
Very cool. Where do you get your inspiration from?
I don't know. It's kind of hard to, all over the place, really. Sometimes just randomly just sitting there and doing something else, and I'll just have a brief thought of something, and I'm like, yeah, that'd be a cool story. And some of the stories in Charred Remains, it was just like a small scene or maybe a flash of a creature's face or something, and I'm like, that would be cool if I kind of elaborate on that, and then I would just start writing and just kind of see where it goes. But mostly what I like to do is I've got a few other author friends that I like to bounce ideas off of. I'll text them and be like, hey, I just got this idea for a book or a story. What do you think? And then usually they're like, well, it kind of sounds like this book. I'm like, okay, well, I'm canning that idea then because it's already been done. But I don't know.
It hasn't been done your way.
That's true.
I've actually dealt with that recently. I had a couple people reach out and try to bounce ideas off. And I'm like, of course, everything can sound similar and things like that. It just takes one thing and somebody's like, oh yeah, I saw that somewhere, but nobody has done it the way you have.
That's true.
So if you really like the idea, then definitely take it and just twist it to your own flair, because everything's been done.
Right.
Everything has been done. Nobody wants to admit it, but like if you look at Hollywood, everything's been fucking done.
Yeah.
So just give it your own spin. It could be something really great.
Yeah, that's true.
So you have a tribe then?
Oh yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I've got a whole slew of other mostly independently published or self-published authors too that I kind of, I have a whole shelf on my bookshelf that's just all their books. There's anyone that I've ever met in the author business. I've got a signed copy of their book, and yeah, we're always connected. And anytime I've got an idea or they have an idea, we just kind of chat. It's a lot of fun.
That's very cool. I mean, that's helpful. And apparently they're shooting down some of your potentially really
A little bit, yeah.
It sounds helpful. So you've always written. Did you go to school for writing? Did you what is your writing sort of dream? What do you want to do with your writing? Like, what would be, if you were Evan Bond able to name what your writing goal is, what would that be like for you?
So really, for me, that would just be just full-time, just author, writing my books full-time and marketing and all that, just doing that. And that's it. I didn't go to school for writing. I'm not like a technical writer or anything, but I took creative writing and stuff in high school. But yeah, I just want to be able to work on my books and work on my characters and just write. That's all I want to do.
Very cool. How much, so how many books do you have going right now?
Well, I have one book that I finished a couple years ago that I ended up not liking the structure of it. So that's still sitting on my hard drive somewhere. I've got a book that's supposed to be coming out later this year, but I'm still waiting on my artist that's kind of making my artwork or the book cover, and she's not done with that yet. So that's waiting to come out. I have like 2 different ideas that are currently rolling around in my head now that I'm trying to keep myself from jumping into because I've got other things I want to work on. But so probably about 4 sitting there right now.
So
the ideas that can't work with what you're currently working on.
Say that again.
Is the ideas that you say that are bouncing around, like, is it something that you can't incorporate into what you're doing now? Like, what is your writing style? Do you go chapter 1 to chapter 10?
Yeah,
okay,
I do write in order. I actually have a friend who I asked him, he writes down scenes on like index cards as they come to him, and then he'll write individual scenes and chapters as he gets inspired. And I went to his house one day and I saw his office, and his whole wall is just index cards. And I was like, so how do you do that? I have to write start to finish. I can't figure it out. And I know a few other authors that I just write. When a scene pops in my head for the book, I write it and then I write something else. I don't know how you can do that, but
yeah, mine's more chaotic than that.
Yeah.
Mine's a little worse than that. Yeah. But I mean, if you have those ideas bouncing around in your head, it doesn't necessarily have to be a different book. It could be something your brain is trying to work out for that particular book. So maybe it's something that you can incorporate into it instead of creating an entire different idea. If you wanted to, not telling you what to do,
No.
but just if you wanted to.
No, that's a good idea. Yeah, I never really thought about that because there's just a couple things that all I've got is like the the opening chapter to a book in my head, but I'm like, I don't have anything else. So I don't want to start writing it and just have it just go nowhere. But yeah, I never thought about that. That's cool.
Do you,
Yeah.
so when you do sit down, do you just write front to back?
Yeah. I start with chapter 1, or if there's a prologue or whatever, I start there and I just write until I get to the end, and then I go back and delete chapters that didn't work or add chapters that I need or whatever. But yeah, I write front to back.
Yeah, no, I
That's
do a
mind-blowing.
similar thing. Yeah. Sierra doesn't even write in the same universe as some of her other books. She's like, let me just do this whole page and put it over there. What do you do when you find that a story's not working the way you want it to? Do you graveyard it or do you pull it out? How do you deal with that?
Yeah, I've actually got a bunch of like unfinished stories, or some that are even completely finished, just sitting in a folder somewhere on my desktop, that I just don't. I tend to not delete anything. Even if I finish a whole book and I'm like, I don't like that. I don't like to delete it, because you just never know what you might pull from it later. You might change the book up, or maybe pull characters or scenes from it or whatever. But yeah, I just kind of stick them there, and I'll come back to them if I get inspired. Like that book I said that I finished, that I don't know what to do with. I actually was talking with another author buddy a few weeks ago, and I was like, I actually sent it to him, and he started reading it. He was like, this is pretty good. And I was like, yeah, but it's not what I want. I want something better, and I don't know what to do. So we kind of chatted about how I could make it better. And so one day I'll go back to it. But yeah, I just tend to shove them into
What is that one about?
So that one was about, it was inspired by a buddy that I used to hang out with. He had a YouTube channel where he explored abandoned places, and him and I went and explored this whole like neighborhood that was abandoned. And while we were walking through, he's doing his video and stuff, and I said to him, I was like, wouldn't it be crazy if we like left the abandoned like neighborhood, but then as we like walked around the corner, we were back in it, and we just couldn't leave. We're just stuck here. And then him and I just started chatting about that and how like fun and crazy that would be. And I was like, I'm gonna make that into a book. And I wrote it, and it's these YouTubers go to an abandoned like whole town they find that's abandoned, and they get stuck there, they can't leave, and the town is like haunted by some evil that's trying to possess them or whatever. It didn't come out where I wanted it to go, but that was like the general idea of it.
That sounds like a lot of fun.
That sounds that sounds super fun. You should definitely go back to that one.
He does. We don't talk often, but he does text me every once in a while. I go, so where's that book? And I'm like, I know, I'll go back to it.
No, I think that sounds like it's true. I watch a lot of the videos of, there's a particular person, I can't remember his name, who finds these mansions and stuff. And it's even globally that he does this, where he'll go into these like billion-dollar estates, or multi-million-dollar estates. And people I think a lot of people don't realize that most people don't, like when they move from large houses like that, they've gotten the furniture to fit that house.
Right.
And
so then you just leave it.
Like normal blue collar people, and I'm just going to say this, a lot of us were like, oh, we're moving, we're packing all of our stuff and we're moving. Yeah. You don't do that. Part of the whole move is you leave the majority of the furnishings there, and you get whole new furnishings in your new house.
Yeah.
I would say we did that when we had to move from Pennsylvania to Florida. We were like, because our moving company brought the wrong size. I was like, I feel so bougie right now, just leaving the furniture, like, screw it, we'll get new ones. But yeah, a lot of those abandoned houses, I think that ups the creep factor, because like they're not empty. They look like somebody could come home at any minute if you ignore like the cobwebs and the decay or whatever, but it looks like somebody could walk in any second, and it's like, no, I'm good.
He took us into this, it wasn't really a hospital, but it was some sort of medical facility that was abandoned, and like they clearly moved everything, like they were gonna take everything out. There were like file cabinets everywhere, and there were chairs, and there was like this one room that had nothing in it, and there was just a single like wheelchair sitting in this like white clear room. It was really creepy, and it was like the one time I was like, can we leave? I don't like this. but yeah, it's really creepy, because it's like there's still all this stuff here. There's paperwork signed by people. How is that still here? Like it's nuts.
No,
and you know not to go.
What's interesting to me is it looks like, I don't know if this is part of your book, but it looks like people just, something happened, they just left. Like that's one of my favorite parts. Aliens is my favorite movie of all time. But that's one of the parts I love that they did with that, is like the donut on the table with a cup of coffee and stuff, like where you could tell whatever happened, They
They
were
just
right
booked it.
in the middle and then they were just gone.
Yeah.
You know, which is what makes it even creepier when it looks like they, you know, stuff is, it's not just the decorations are still on the walls, but there are papers on the table or there are plates with what used to be food on the dining room table. And you go, what the fuck happened that they just left? Right?
Right. Like what was Chernobyl with all that stuff. You see images from that, just they just left. They took nothing with them, and there's just stuff as kids' toys still laying out in the living rooms. It's really creepy.
You know, well, if Chernobyl's having a meltdown, I think I would probably just leave too.
I'd run.
I'm gonna do that the next time I move. I'm gonna leave like certain things and I'm gonna just like fucking book it. That way the next person that comes in, they're gonna be like, what the fuck happened? Like they left dinner on the table. I'm gonna do that.
With
That's
like
gonna be my plan.
the spatula in the fry pan.
Halfway or like
Yeah.
or dropped off to the side on the table, like some shit went down and you were just like screw dinner and dropped it and just booked it. That's what I'm gonna do. Plan.
I love that idea. I actually think
Pretty
that's a
fun.
brilliant idea. That could be an entire series right there of abandoned places.
Short stories, why they left.
Oh my
There you
God,
go. There's a title. Look at that.
There you
Boom.
go.
I'm actually
Another
writing that
anthology.
down. That is a
I'm
great
just knocking
idea.
these
I'm writing
anthologies
that down.
out.
I have to. These are things. Okay. Okay. We have to take a quick break. We'll be right back with Evan Bond.
Sample locally sourced, quality distilled spirits in the beautiful Columbia River Gorge. At Skunk Brothers Distillery, we're family owned, brewing small batch grain to bottle spirits, just like our grandfather did back in the Prohibition era. From handcrafted bourbons and moonshine to flavored blends and cordials infused with local fruit. Join us for a tasting tour and buy Skunk Brothers spirits straight from the source.
It's all in the family at Skunk Brothers Spirits, located in Stevenson, Washington.
Okay, as we're not talking about Marvel movies. So that is pretty cool. Let's talk about, so you published basically as an indie. What has that been like, marketing and learning the fact that you are a business now?
Oh, it's tough. Because there's like the one part of you wants to be like, I'm not a business, I'm a person, and but then you have to market, and learning the marketing I'm still learning. I still don't know much about it. I only just now feel like my social media is really starting to grow and go somewhere. Yeah, it's tough because you'll post stuff on like Instagram or something and you're talking to nobody. You'll get like 1 or 2 likes and you're just like, man, that's terrible. And then you'll post some random thing and you'll get 200 likes and you're like, what do I do? I don't know how to. So yeah, learning the marketing is tough. I'm still not perfect at it, but I'm always learning something new. So
I was talking to somebody about this literally moments before this podcast, because they were talking about, I don't understand how to do these things. So you're not selling. The biggest way you can, for anyone listening too, be creative on some of these sites is do fun things that then lead to your book instead of trying to sell your book. Like talk like you're the character from the book, but not acting talk, like have a real conversation or, with the camera, because look at the stuff that gets the most likes on these things. There's some of the most ridiculous things. It's not steadfast, great content, and nobody out there get offended and start sending me hate mail. But I mean, it's not like the people that get the biggest followers are not like serious actor or like, we're going to be seriously talking about this fan base. They, like even for instance, I saw a video where they were playing the trailer for Songs and Snakes, Songs and Snow, or whatever the fuck the follow-up prequel to Hunger Games is. I have this book and I can't remember what the name of it is, but and it's a great story about where Snow came from and what starts twisting him into being the fucktard that he ends up being, right?
He's fucking genius though.
Yeah,
he is a genius. He made it so the world. It's fine. We'll talk about this.
We can talk about. As soon as I really like my example, then you can talk about this. But the whole point was they were playing this trailer above them and talking about just how excited they were about this and that it was coming out. I will guarantee you, fucking book sales increased when that happened.
Right.
Because it's not like they were whatever, but they were just fangirling over the fact that this movie was coming out, which I'm actually excited to see who they choose as the female lead for that, because she was a pretty fucking badass character, right?
Snow was a man.
No, but the female that he falls in love with in the game,
Oh.
it taught me, the story. Did you listen or read this book, CR?
No, I haven't. I've had a lot of shit going on. I haven't
Okay.
really gotten into the whole thing yet, but I will say I did pre-order it. As one of those people, as soon as I found out it was coming out, like I did pre-order it. I haven't been able to follow it though. But
So,
people get
I
crazy. with
did
changing
too,
shit, so I got
and I've already
nervous.
listened to it and all that and read it and then gave it away to other people. But the premise is it starts off explaining where snow comes from. I'm not going to give too much away, but they decide to do the first Hunger Games for Academy students. And so they make them they had Hunger Games, but nobody was watching them. Like they had them going, but they decide this Academy group has to basically sponsor one of the people and try to drum up interest in doing it. And it's how a lot of things change for the Hunger Games, right? Because otherwise
Right.
it's just in an arena. It's this brutal thing where people beat the crap out of each other and nobody was paying attention. Didn't do much for the districts other than they were sacrificing people to it all the time, right? And
Right.
even for districts like 1 and 2 and stuff like that, it wasn't the same. Like there weren't people who were set up to win the games. It was just better families. It's anyway, that whole thing is complex, but Snow ends up being assigned a female from District 12 as the person he has
And
to
that's why District 12
assist.
got fucked. See, then we get
Yeah.
all like predictive and stuff, and that gets annoying.
But it makes sense, but this female is a gypsy, right? Even in District 12.
You're not allowed to leave districts though.
Yeah. She's anyway.
I'm gonna read the book. I'm gonna
You
read the
need
book.
to read the book.
I'm gonna read the book.
But she's a singer and there's all this stuff with her. And it's a very neat story, but she is kind of strong as fuck, right? And not like this wimpy kind of character, even though in the beginning she kind of seems that way. And it's interesting because it's really a play on how the capital looked upon these other districts. I mean, you get that in the Hunger Games, but it's really different when it's done the way it's done. So anyway, going down a whole path, but it's pretty
Anyways.
badass. Yes, I enjoy it.
We do
thoroughly.
tangents, by the way, Evan. We do a lot of tangents.
Tangents are great.
So, have you done audiobooks for your books yet?
No, I haven't. I've actually been like trying to figure out how to do that. I kind of want to. I think it'd be cool. I had somebody a friend reach out who was trying to get into voiceover work, and he started to do it, but I haven't heard anything back. That was like a year ago now, so I think that's probably out. But I'd like to do audiobooks.
So let me tell you a little trick, and again, for everybody listening. The biggest standard to adhere to audiobooks is the ACX standard for audiobooks. I am not a fan of ACX. I think they're antiquated and outdated, but Amazon is the big gorilla in the room, so they can do whatever the fuck they want to do. But they have a standard sheet on what the book has to look like. I think a lot of people that want to get into narration think that they have a good voice, and they could, but forget that just like anything you become good at, you have to practice. You don't realize what your breathing sounds like until you hear yourself play back and you're like, why do I sound like I'm panting? You may not be panting, but you fucking sound like you're panting,
Yeah.
right? And how to re-record it, and how to have consistency, and how to put stuff together, and how long can you go? For anybody who's done any acting, anything like that, I raise my hand. But I've done a lot of that kind of stuff. And you're on and you don't realize how much energy it takes to just do that, even for a short period of time. This is an exhausting thing to do. And so when you're reading, a lot of people don't realize when you first start out, if you get an hour of actually reading and recording, first of all, you're not going to get a whole finished hour like of recorded material out of that hour. Maybe your first time doing it, you'd be lucky if you get a couple minutes actually out that is usable and sustainable. So you have to keep doing it. And I think a lot of people that get into it, because I have people that reach out to me as a publishing company all the time and go, I want to do narration. And I'm like, oh, do you? And find that they're like, oh, this took me X amount of hours. And I know we agreed on a finished hour, but I'm like, that's why I told you that to begin with, if you were sure you wanted to do it. Meanwhile, I'm having it recorded by somebody else because I'm like, this person's not going to get it. Or with the usable product. So that's what, if anybody ever goes, I want to do narration, look up those specs, fucking take Alice in Wonderland, take your favorite book and just practice trying to record it, practice doing the different voices for the different characters, that sort of thing, because these guys do such a good job. But if you get really good at it, you can actually make a shit ton of money doing it, because if you can sit down and bang it out and not have a bunch of re-records and stuff like that, the per finished hour rate could be kind of sweet, you know. And anyway, food for thought. Have you thought about recording your own books?
Yeah, I did think about it. It seems like it's going to take a while, and it's definitely a lot of work. So I haven't really sat down and done it. I did for a while. I was doing on my YouTube channel. I was doing like, I'd write short stories and then I would narrate them, and I would post them to YouTube, and they were a lot of fun, but they took a long time for just like a 10-minute short story. So I was like, man, I feel like with my skill set, it's going to take me months to record just one book, or even just a couple of chapters. So I've thought about it, but at the same time, you know, and I've like Google searched it, and some people are like, I hate it when the author reads their own book, and other people are like, I love it when they read their own book. So I'm not sure what I should do. So, but
You're never going to make everybody happy. You just have to knock that off right off the top. Like nobody is 100% happy with anything.
Never.
Like you could do Oxygen. Does everybody like to read Oxygen? And they're like, well, I think we could do better. It's like, well, no, you really can't.
Yeah.
Like you got one option.
No, it's true. And I think it also depends on whether or not you're just monotone reading it, or you're actually getting into the characters and you're talking from the character's point of view. And, you know, nonfiction, I think it's almost vital that the author is the one reading their stuff, especially if it's a memoir or something like that. Right. I think that's important. But at the same time, if you're not good at it, maybe you shouldn't do it.
Right.
Some people just do not have certain skill sets in life. And that happens to be one of those skill sets you either have or you do not have. Let's talk about fans. Have you gone to conventions and stuff with your books?
Yeah, I have. Last year I did Tampa Bay Comic-Con. That's actually where I bumped into Drinking with Authors, but I think it was last year.
Yes, that sounds right. We were there last year.
Yeah, I think it was. Yeah, I wanted to go this year, but we're gonna be out of town, so we can't go this year. But yeah, I went to the Tampa Bay Comic-Con, which was my first year there, and that was a big one. That was a lot of fun. But other than that, I've done a few other smaller conventions. A few years ago, I did one called Festival of Reading in St. Pete, and that was fun. But they haven't done it since. So, but yeah, I've done a few conventions, and it's fun. It's always fun, even the weekends that you don't really sell a lot or whatever. It's still just fun being there and chatting with people, and it's a lot of fun.
Very cool. What has it been like to meet fans? Have you met fans at these?
I haven't met anybody who's like read my books, like so that hasn't really happened yet. I've not met anyone who's like, oh my god, I've read your book. And I've had some people, like last year at Tampa Bay Comic-Con, I had someone buy my books. They went home and then they came back the next day and they came up to the table and they said, oh, I read your book and it was so good. And I was like, I didn't expect that at all. So that was really cool. But yeah, I haven't really met anyone who's like come up to me and said that they've already read my stuff and they're excited to meet me or anything. That's not happened yet.
What is the weirdest thing that you've encountered from doing the conventions? What was something that you didn't expect but you encountered?
I mean, not that I didn't expect it, but you meet a lot of people who also write or are writers. They write books or whatever. Like pretty much every convention, you have someone come up and go, "Hey, I'm a writer too," and then they they pitch you their book ideas, and then you just chat with them. I guess I didn't expect that the first time I did like a major convention, but you get a lot of people that come up and they're like, "Oh, I write too," and they're trying to pick your brain and stuff, but which is great. It's fun to do. It's fun to chat with those people, but nothing really like crazy. But just didn't expect people to approach and be like, "Hey, I'm a writer. What can I do?" And they're like they're asking me for advice. Like I'm like, I don't know. Just do whatever you can, I guess.
Well, you're there with books out, so you're steps above most people. So
it seemed like I remember. I don't know if you know who Elise Kova is, but no. She's she started self-published, but now she's kind of a big name author. But I met her at Tampa Bay Comic-Con like 6 years ago, And I mentioned that I had her books and everything, and we were chatting. And of course, and then I was one of those people who was like, hey, I'm a writer too. And we started chatting. And then I told her, I was like, yeah, I'm no big deal. I'm not doing like conventions or whatever. And she was like, oh, one day you'll be here. And then last year there I was. So it's kind of like this weird moment where I was like, hey, just like 5 years ago, I said, I'll probably never be this. And now here I am doing it. So that's kind of cool. But
Well, that is cool. What about online reviews and stuff?
yeah, got quite a few reviews. Like I said, the first book that I put out, there was a few negative reviews, but I like to think that most negative reviews they come from a good place. They tell you like how to make your work better. But one review on Echoes of the Past, my last book, stuck with me. This guy, I think he's from Ireland or something, and his review said that he gave it a 1 star because it didn't have enough guns and Americans love their guns. That was like all his review said. And I had to text that to one of my author friends. I was like, listen to this review I just got. So he was like, don't sweat it. I'm like, no, it's actually kind of funny. I don't know why he was very mad about the lack of guns in my book.
Well,
Have you had go ahead.
I was going to say you can't please people all the time. You'll either
No.
have too
Very
many
true.
guns or too few guns.
Yeah.
Any other captain? Not that I have to use this one.
It's have you had the times when people try to give you suggestions on your book where they try to correct you?
Oh yeah, absolutely. And every time I get that, oh man, I want to say it's a quote from Neil Gaiman, I think, I think it's him who says, anytime as someone tells you what doesn't work for them, they're right. But anytime they tell you how to fix it, they're wrong. And so I tend to just, if it's something that's like personal to them, I tend to just ignore it. But sometimes someone will say something and you'll look back at your work and go, maybe they've got a point. Maybe I should think about that in the future. But yeah, I've had quite a few that are like, the author should do this. And I'm like, okay, well, how many books have you published? So, you shouldn't be telling me if I should be doing this.
I appreciate that. How many books have you published?
Yeah.
Exactly.
Because people don't understand how hard it is to go from start to finish. First of all, the biggest step of writing a book, which nobody completely understands, it's not easy going from start to finish. Like, even if you don't write chapter 1 to chapter 20 or 50, whatever it is, it's really hard to finish a book. And
Right.
that doesn't mean you're done. You still have at least 1 or 2 editing sessions before it even goes out. So like people, especially once you release a book and people are waiting for it, they're like, oh, okay, cool. So when's the next one? And it's like, do you understand how much time I just spent on this? And you just devoured it like very greedily. You're not even appreciating the time that went into it, because people don't understand how hard those things are.
Yeah.
No, you just got to feed the need, feed the thing. That's why I think people get excited for authors that have multiple books out when they discover them, because they're like,
Yeah.
just eating all of the writing up.
Yeah.
So Evan, talk to us about your writing space. We see your hold on, CR is trying to recover from the fact that I believe her husband only put rum and no Dr. Pepper in that. You can tell her face is on fire and it's turned red. It's fine. We're gonna move on. Okay. And when she can breathe again.
Good.
Okay. Are you sure? Because
It was just, it's when you ever take a drink of a drink that you're not expecting it to be that strong, and all of a sudden it's in your nose too. So then it's in your mouth, it's in your nose, and your eyes are watering and you can't breathe. It's like you forgot how to breathe. And then like, yeah.
I call that an awesome drink. That's
Yeah.
what I call
Thanks,
that.
Vinny. Absolutely. But like, warn somebody, like just
Mix
let
it
them
up a
know
little
you
bit.
gave them a little, I just gave them a little extra something in there. Just like give them a little warning. It's like when you go to take a drink of water and it's like Sprite or something. And it just.
How about the iced tea or Coke? That's my favorite one to see people's reaction when they think it's Coke and it's iced tea, or they think it's iced tea and it's Coke.
Yep.
Yes.
Oh, I do that all the
Yeah.
time. My wife loves iced tea and she'll get it from like McDonald's or something and she'll put it in the fridge, but I won't know that's what it is. And I don't like tea, and I'll grab it out and I'm like, ooh, a Coke. And then I'll take a huge sip of it. And I'm like, why would she not tell me? Why would you
What
just
is
put
it?
this in there?
Yep.
Okay,
Absolutely.
let's talk. You have an epic nerd space behind you. Any of them
Yes.
watching the YouTube will see this. Is this is it? I'm assuming this is your office, your writing environment.
Yes. Yeah, so yeah, my office kind of doubles as my like gaming space too. I've got a gaming PC and everything, but yeah, I have my own office set up for it, which is relatively new. We bought this house in December, and before that, my writing space was just a desk in my bedroom. So, and I would do all my writing when my wife would go to sleep, and I'd be like clacking away at the keys, and I'd be like, keep looking over at her, like, am I waking you up? No, okay, and I keep going. So now I have my own writing space. I can listen to music and be as loud as I want. So, but yeah, I've got it. I'm a huge nerd at heart too. So I've just got tons of nerdy stuff, lightsabers, and artwork that every time I go to these conventions to sell my books, I end up leaving with people's art. And so I probably spend more money than I make, but yeah, it's just my own little office space. It's fun. I like it.
So are you Xbox or PlayStation?
PC actually.
You don't do, so do you not do like Xbox on PC?
I mean, I have like Xbox Game Pass, but yeah, I just play on PC. Yeah, I have an Xbox One, but I haven't touched it in like 2 years. So
Yeah. Are you gonna make it through this beverage that you now have?
I don't know what he did, but like I think he might have done a splash of like rubbing alcohol, if I'm not wrong. Because it's Captain. Like I can drink Captain straight and I'm fine. And I don't know what is going on, but like got a little rubbing alcohol. It's fine. I'll work it through. Okay.
Okay, so what are you working on now, Evan?
So right now, I'm working on, well, there's that book that I've got hopefully coming out later this year. I'm still kind of working on some edits for it, but so that book is called After Death, and it follows a man, well, actually not a man, a spirit. His name is Jeffrey Rains, and he's a bounty hunter for death. And he goes around and he reaps like wandering spirits that hurt the living and other spirits to help keep the balance. And
Cool.
he's known as a hellhound is what they call him. And he goes around reaping spirits. And then she gives him a task to reap one of the living who hellhound can't usually reap a living person because they have to be dead first. So he's found a way to extend his life longer than he should, and he's becoming super powerful, and she wants it to stop. So it's kind of like a paranormal adventure with some horror thrown in there, but I'm working on that. And then I'm in the planning stages of book 2 for that one. So
Very cool. And
So
you go ahead.
what do you think defines genres? To me have gotten so blurred lately. Everything has shifted and things like, what do you think defines horror nowadays? And do you think there are different degrees of horror?
Oh yeah, absolutely. I actually have this like internal struggle almost every day because I tell people I'm a horror author, but I'm like, well, but are my books that scary? And then I think, but you know, I don't really always think that horror has to be necessarily scary. It just, I mean, dark. Horror can really just be dark fiction. You know, something that takes the darker side of either humanity or the darker themes or you know, but it's so blurred now. It's so hard to tell what's what. So I kind of like it because now I can write and have fun and just kind of like put little stuff from everything in there. It can be a fun adventure story with some horror elements. Like in this book that I'm working on, there's definitely a few chapters where I'm like, this is just straight up a horror story right now. There's like a poltergeist type spirit terrorizing a family. It's just a straight horror. But then in the next chapter, you've got this Jeffrey Rains guy who's kind of like, he's got like a cavalier attitude, and he runs around reaping spirits, and he kind of has fun with it. Feels more like an adventure story. So it almost feels different almost every chapter, and it's fun. But yeah, I think it's kind of hard to pinpoint what horror is exactly these days because it's so different, you know.
Well, also real life is pretty fucking terrifying right at this moment in time.
Yeah.
And it's crazy, like the comments you get from people. The reason I ask, I actually had I did a book, it's called Sins of the Father. I didn't think it was particularly scary. I got a comment from a mother of a 12-year-old that had purchased the book believing it was young adult, because I do write young adult. And she was angry because it was too gory and horror, and she was not informed. And I don't think that I write horror. So I just
that
like
wasn't
to
horror. I think it's
literally gore. There's a difference.
Yeah. Well, I think that first of all, young adult can have horror in it, and it's not bad. Most stories, I mean, hell, even Twilight,
Listen,
I know, but it does have
I
a degree
hate that
of,
series.
I know you do, but it does have a degree of horror in it when it's talking about certain aspects in the
Is
book.
it the glitter? Is it the glitter? Because
The
everybody gets
terrifying
scared with the
glitter.
glitter.
But I'll tell you, especially even now, like she put out one called Midnight Sun, and it's Edward's side of the story, right? Which, by the way, Edward is way fucking stockier and creepier than the
Creepy?
guy from You. Okay, let me just.
Right?
Yeah, I would much rather have Joe from You following me around than Edward, because it's that bad. But there is a degree of horror. It's true in Vampire Diaries, because the people, like, if you read the
Right.
books, the people that die, how they die, stuff like the description.
Exactly. It comes down to, I think it comes down to perception, which again, like we said before, like nobody can ever hit. And I think, but lines have gotten so blurred with everything because you have, you know, like with horror, you have, I think everybody's adding disclaimers on everything now is what it is. It's like, okay, it's like a fucking movie, you know, TV 14, rated R, there may be sexual nudity, maybe we mentioned cigarettes, somebody may get disemboweled, like you have to add those things. And it's so weird, I think, as an author now to try to put yourself into a genre, because like you said, you have a couple chapters where you're like, oh, hell yeah, this is horror. But then you're like, well, we're kind of an action adventure. So like it gets really difficult.
Right.
Well, I also think the gore factor is part of what it is and what it's describing and how detailed it describes it. It's kind of like the whole
We might have to-
romance sex thing. Like, are you just
Because
kissing?
there is a
You
difference
go-
between
you go all the way to
romance
the
and
door? Are
erotica.
you inside the door? Are you in the bed?
Yes.
And it's like, how much do you describe it? And then what is it that's describing it? Because it's kind of like the whole thing, we talked about this before, killing animals in a book, right?
That is
You
a big no-no.
Yeah,
can't
it
do
is a
that.
big no-no. You'll get on different lists. Well, it's not a big no-no so much as be prepared, because people will lose their shit over the fact that you killed a dog. You can kill 20 children, but you
Yeah.
killed a dog, and it's
I got cussed out for having an animal get injured.
Oh my God.
Yeah, it was pretty bad. But like,
And
it's
you-
one of those things exactly like that. Like there's so many fine lines. Like you can fucking decapitate people, but do not smack your dog.
Right.
Okay. Like that's our line.
yeah.
Well,
and
it's just so subjective, right? Like, I mean, one person's horror is not another person's horror. Somebody could watch like the Saw movies and think that that's just straight up horror, but someone else could say it's stupid, you know, gore and nobody cares about it. But it's so subjective, so it's so hard to tell. Like there's some people who will read the scariest book in the world and they'll be like, that book was boring, but somebody else, it might be their favorite horror book that makes them not sleep at night. And it's so hard to define what exactly horror is. And I think most people, they think of horror from like the old 80s, like slasher films. That was horror, but that's not really what horror is, you know?
Yeah, it's so desensitized now. Like you
Yeah.
gotta get deep.
I in the Saw argument, as one that was alive when the first Freddy Krueger movie came out, the first Nightmare on Elm Street was fucking terrifying.
That is still terrifying.
It is, except for the Johnny Depp blood ceiling thing, not so much. But if you go to Nightmare on Elm Street 3 or 4 and stuff, it's not really scary. It's gory and stuff, but it's not scary. Like not sleep at night, which is always like the true thing with when they talk about Halloween and the fact that movie had 0 blood in it.
Did it really? Like
It
the
had
new
0
one?
blood. There was no blood in Halloween.
Is that the
The reason
original?
I
The
watched that
original?
as a
The
kid.
original Halloween had no blood in it.
I'll have to watch it.
What about the new one?
Huh.
I heard
But
the
that's
new
my
one was-
point, is I'm saying this, you guys are gonna go back and watch it and get to the end and go, motherfucker, there's no blood in this. But we assumed it was there. It was terrifying. The attacks were happening, but there wasn't blood. It was kind of like the original Scream was actually a really scary movie, but I think part of the reason the original Scream was so scary was because there was that thriller, that unknown, and then when the reveal happens, right? It's scary when it can be something so realistic that could happen, right?
You know, I've never seen those.
Scream, some of the
I've never
original
seen them.
I enjoy, but then I make reference to this movie too, Cabin Fever. I fucking hated it because all Cabin Fever was gore. Like it was just gross gore and there wasn't a plot that went,
Agreed.
okay, like the original Saw movie, the first Saw movie was that
Terrifying.
whole thing was scary as fuck. And it wasn't scary because necessarily what was happening to them, but the fact that anyone could have been placed in that situation and had that happen
Yes.
and what choices you made. It's kind of like the Black Mirror, like that first episode of Black Mirror. Have you ever watched it?
I haven't seen the first. I've seen a couple episodes. I've never seen the first one.
So the first episode, spoiler alert, there's a British prime minister, and I want to say the royalty's daughter is kidnapped. And basically he's told in order to get this person back, and they send back a finger or something like that, but to get her back in one piece, he has to go on television and fuck a pig.
What? Oh my
You know
God.
what? We have lines, guys. If you kidnap somebody, like make it reasonable.
Right.
But that was the whole point,
not
was
kidnapping
in the way
people.
they did this, and it was so shocking. A lot of people were like, what the fuck? Was he was put in a position, and it literally shows the side from talking to his wife about this, and this is his duty, and here's this daughter that's being like, they're sending pieces of her back, right? And when you get to near the end of the episode, which, sorry, spoiler alert, what happens is they end up dropping her off, not with missing a finger, before he actually airs this, and he has to do it for like 6 hours.
Oh my
And
God.
she is dropped off on a bridge in perfect health and totally fine in the middle of, before actually he starts doing this. So she's already safe, and it doesn't get back to him.
Okay, I gotta say that's pretty fucking genius. You know what? That is pretty amazing. Terrible.
But it's
Nobody
like, and then
ever
of course
do
it
this.
shows the aftermath of what happens to him with his career and all this other stuff, right? And it's interesting because I like it when, to me, it can be very terrifying to put yourself in a real life situation. And I think that's where Stephen King does so well, along with other, like I can think of many other people that are great horror authors, Jonathan Mayberry, Jeff Strand, like, you know, these people. Luckily I've gotten to interview and I'm friends with some of them, but and I'm a horror writer myself, is put yourself in a real life fucking situation, and what would you do? And you think you would do certain things, but would you? Like, would you saw off your own ankle to get out of a situation? Would you? Could you?
Yeah,
That's what it's for.
in every Saw movie, I've always thought that. I'm like, what would I do? And I'm like, I'd die. I would die right there. There's no way I could saw my own foot off. I mean, maybe I could when I'm there, but
Depends on what you're willing to give up.
yeah.
I think it absolutely depends on the situation, because there is a lot of things I would do to change some stuff. But
And I think that's what makes good horror versus good gore.
yes.
Is like even Pet Cemetery, you know, which is, I don't think a single fucking one of the movies has done that book justice. When you look at the really scary parts with the Indian burial ground and things in the trees, and anyway, but
Yeah.
like, what would you do if your kid fucking got hit by a truck and you knew there was a way to bring them back to life?
Fucking do it.
Exactly. Even though they're telling you this person you're bringing back is not the same person, right? It's not going to be your gauge, right? But I think 90% of people, and I'm going to say 90 because I think there is a chunk of people that would have the realization, but maybe it's 95, would do exactly what they did, and then get stuck in the situation where they have this thing that is in their house, terrorizing, attacking, killing,
Right.
you know,
So
people.
I think especially in that situation with horror is like, if you throw yourself in that, like I just said, I would absolutely do it. If you like, so if somebody comes to you, right, and they're like, you have 2 seconds to choose, your knee-jerk reaction, and that's exactly what happened. It was their knee-jerk reaction. Like, if you could fix this, what would you do? And they were like, absolutely. They didn't care about the consequences.
Right.
Because the fact that when you are in that situation, you're not thinking rationally. And that's where I think they play really great, is because when you are in those situations, there is no rationality even able to get within 100-mile radius of you. So it hits you. And if you think about being in that, you could totally see it. Now, looking back, of course not. You don't want to have to go through it twice or anything like that. But to hear something like that, absolutely, 100%.
Right.
Where they draw the line is where they get those hits like Saw. Like Saw terrified the shit out of me. But then what is it, 12 now or something like that?
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah.
you go too far, okay? Like, haha, we get it. It's a game. It's great. But then, like, you just get ridiculous. Like when they had the girl that was like taking over for him, and he's like, "Oh,
His
this
daughter.
was your test, and you failed because you took it too far. Nobody can win." And it's like, well, no shit, you were a fucking psychopath, and you raised a psychopath, like you're a sociopath. Like it's just, what are you doing?
Well, what they're
It's so
doing is called,
hard.
they're still making money off of them, so we're gonna still make them.
How?
Yeah.
How? Guys,
Because
if you
I think
any advice,
people-
stop watching shitty
Okay,
movies.
I have one word for you to explain all of this. You ready? Sharknado.
Yeah.
I never watched it. I literally heard the title and I was like, are you fucking kidding me?
There's
Like, are you kidding me?
But see, the whole point of that is honestly,
Go
there's a
50
ton
feet
of-
away. It can't do shit. It's out of water. What are you gonna do? Like,
but that's the whole thing is people, I think with Sharknado specifically, because there's been a ton of copycats since Sharknado, right?
Yeah.
Is this, I wanted to be there when somebody pitched it. That's really where I want to be. If I could pick somewhere to fucking be, is how somebody pitched it. And they went, yeah, this is a good idea. But what's interesting about that entire franchise, right, is I think it got the people going, what? No, there's no fucking way. And going and watching it because there's no fucking way. But now people go out of their way to be guest stars. I actually just watched the opening of Sharknado 4, I think it is. And it's on a
still
plane
doing
ride. And like fucking Will Wheaton and all of these name stars are on this fucking plane.
because Big Bang is over, so like he needs something.
Actually,
That is
he has
crazy.
a lot of fucking followers. But I think people wanted to be on this when they did it, but it had two people that were not great actors, right, are the leads to this thing, and they put it out there and it just keeps gaining momentum and they keep spending more and more money on it. And so I think that the concept moves forward, and if you're going to keep making money on it, and I hate to say this as we need to wrap up this podcast, but some authors do this with series, is they don't know when to stop. They don't know when to stop the series, or they do, and either they're contractually obligated, or more so probably just fans are demanding and want the next one and want the next one and want the next one. And if you're going to keep making a shit ton of money, I'll keep fucking sawing people's legs off, you know, that's cool.
Why
You can
stop?
fuck some pigs. Like, what's happening here? I'm going to end it with that. We can fuck some pigs. How about that? That's where we're going to end this podcast. Just kidding. Okay. Evan, shameless self-promotion time. I broke Chelsea. That's where I'm ending this. Okay. Shameless self-promotion time, Evan.
So you can follow me. My handle is at Evan Bond Author everywhere. My website is also evanbondauthor.com. But then I've got my newest book, Charred Remains. I got it right here.
Ooh.
So, Charred Remains just came out on my birthday of last month. So that's the newest thing that I got out. And so if anybody wants to go pick that up, that would help me out a lot. And yeah, just follow me, join my newsletter, and yeah, hope to see you guys.
Awesome. Evan, it has been great having you. Thank you so much for being on our podcast.
Thank you for having me. This was fun.
Absolutely. Okay, I've been your host, Erica Lance, and now my officially broken co-host of CR Rice. I know how to end these things now to absolutely ruin the day. Our sponsor has been Skunk Brothers Spirits. If you check out their website and put in coupon code DWA10, you'll get 10% off all of the amazingness. And we will see you guys next time.